Thank you, Mike, for coming over and sharing this with your viewers. I think I have a little over 100 now with motorcycles and the cars. Started with the Schuco. Schuco was a manufacturer that started in 1927, and they started making tin toys, and they had what they called clockwork or wind-up toys. During the war, they shut down a little bit and they started up again in 1945, and most of what I have here are just after the war. They're post-World War II. What they have stamped on them is made in U.S. Zone Germany. After 1949-50, they went to Western Germany, so some of them are Western Germany, and that was the case of some of the later ones. Schuco went out of business in 1976. It was carried on with license from other companies, including a U.S. company that kept making some of the designs for a while using the same dies. They bought the rights and some of the dies. And I tried to collect one of each of the series that I was most interested in. There's a couple of them that I wanted to get and I haven't been able to find. But I've gotten most of them on eBay or on auction sites, and I've switched over to motorcycles now because they're obviously my other interest, so trying to find some special ones in that category. So there's whole collections and series. Some of this series here, the smaller ones, I have the complete series on those. I pretty much have the complete series of the micro series, and these were all cast, whereas these are all stamped tin and clockwork. Some of these are battery operated, and they came with little charging units, so I tried to get just a representation of each of the styles, not necessarily have every one in every color that they came in. I pretty much have each of all the colors that the little buses came in because I just thought they were really cool. They made so many different clockworks. They all did different functions. So I could show you a couple of them, just show you how they work. We'll actually demonstrate some on the table. It'll be a little easier. But I can show you a couple here of the cars. The tin toy cars were kind of where I went next after I did these guys. And then I got into this smaller series. But the car series, they were pretty inventive. These are, again, all Schuco. This one here is the radio model, and it has two clockworks in it. One of them, it winds up the car for movement. You can steer the car. It has steering, so it steers. And it had a Thorn's turntable clockwork music box that they called it the radio. So that was the radio model. It also goes when it's on the ground. Then they made another series. And again, these cars all had cast bumpers on them. All the trim pieces are separate castings or stampings. And this one had a horn, and it would go just like the normal ones, had a brake so you could turn it off so it wouldn't go. The steering is controlled here again, and it has 4 speeds here. So I'll wind this one up and show you. So it has the brake, and then you'd have different speeds. It also has reverse, which I haven't been able to engage, and it's supposed to be pulling or pushing, but I don't want to break anything, so I've been reluctant to do that. So that's basically how those work. And this one is made in U.S. Zone Germany. And you can see it's like mint. I mean, it's like brand new.
Brand new, isn't it?
Yeah. And it comes, I have the box on this one as well.
My goodness.
So that was a pretty nice piece. So they also did the horn on a couple of the other ones. This was based on the BMW 328 model. This one, brake again. Again, the steering operates here, and again, this one has a horn, which is a separate winding, separate music box. It seems already tight, so. And then the brake. So you could have it go around in circles, and
it's just incredible.
Yeah, and it's again all tin stamping. This one is made in Western Germany. So this would have been after 1949. 1950. This is the earliest one. This is pre-war. Somebody had scratched it out, but it had made in Germany here. Maybe somebody had it during the war or just after, and they didn't like the reference to being made in Germany, so they scratched it out. These were all the patents that they had in different countries. You'll see that on all of them almost. Different patents applied for. These were really unique because it's actually a 4-speed and reverse. So you could set the speed ahead of time. You had a little shift lever here, and you could put it in the gear you wanted it to go in. In this case, it's in reverse. So it's going in reverse. I want to go into first gear. Is here, and it has a neutral as well. So that's first gear, third gear, or fourth gear, and third gear. And neutral.
Just amazing.
Yeah. So that's that one. That's also very nice. That's all these are separate little stampings. Sometimes they'd have hundreds of stampings on these to make them all these little pieces. So that's that one. And these other two here are variations of that. They're probably Western Germany, a little later. The other one that was really neat was the Mercedes. This is a little later one. This had some plastic in it. So, toys later on, I think this would have been made, this is Western Germany. Yeah, this is Western Germany, 1950. And this one would have had a control cable that mounts into the hood here. And it had a little control unit similar to this that you could steer it by. And I have that in the box there. And later on they became more sophisticated. It has plastic interior, which was coming in at some point. They brought it in to toys, and toys were being made out of plastic. The wheels are plastic, but they all have rubber tires, which was really interesting. Again, all these are separate stampings, has little plastic jewels for the taillights and the headlights, which are really cool, and the bumper.
It's exquisite, isn't it?
The bumper is, and the grille is all stamped. This one wasn't cast like the earlier ones. So the other thing that's interesting about this is that it would start as soon as you set it down, because it has a little a little switch right here.
Yes.
So as soon as you set it down, it would go. And again, you could steer it, just like with the others.
No.
This one here is Gamma, G-A-M-A. See, it wants to take off there. That one doesn't have a brake. This one here was very clever. It would run into things and then turn away. I believe it was made by one of the employees that worked for Schuco, and he went off on his own. And again, this is, if it drops off the edge or something, it activates the whole thing. It has a brake here. This one I have to really show you how it works, because I'll actually show you right here. It's all stampings, no castings on that one. I have a couple here that don't work as intended because the tires are very hard. It doesn't flip over like it's supposed to. This one is, it goes in a circle, it makes a tight turn, and then it flips over. Oh. It rolls all the way over. And it has a little bumper here. You pull this out, the SOS, and it causes it to roll. The rubber is just old, and so it doesn't grip like it's supposed to make it. Yes. So it just does a real quick turn instead. This one steers by the bumper grill here. Oh, yes. So it clicks in. It starts when you set it down. That's the brake. It has little rubber pieces here. It has this band here, which is the flex. It says Schuco Flex on it. So it has little rubber, and it has these pieces so it doesn't scratch the paint. Some of these car designs were actually designed by Schuco. I think his name was Meyer, the original. He died pretty early on, like 1959 or something. So he started in 27, and he actually made a full-size car that represented one of his models. He had it custom made. The little vehicles, most of the buses, they ran on a guide wire. So they had a little wire the car would run on, and it would follow the cable by the little wheel. This one's a battery operated one. Has a little battery compartment here. The batteries go in there, 2 penlight batteries. Pretty fragile. The plastic is pretty old on these. So that was the battery, and here's your on-off switch. So the drive was here. These don't really move. The wheels aren't really part of it because it would work on this cable. This is actually an on-off switch. You could put up little stations like this, especially the charging station like this one's in here. If you had this out, you could set it to come out, and the car would go up there and it would turn off by hitting the bumper. And then you had a power pack you hooked up to these terminals here, and it would charge automatically until it reached a charge, and then you could release it and it would continue. You could have track all over. Here's an example of this coiled cable. You could also steer it through this little opening here, just like the truck is. I'll show you how that one looks. So the truck, and you had all kinds of little intersections. You could have a stop here, so it would come up and stop here. And they had Ys where you could branch out. They had crosses you could cross, just like a train set. This one here, you had this little cable with a little rubber tip on it, and you would just control it on tabletop. It steers the steering of that little wheel down there. This one has 3 speeds here. It's off. And you would have slow. 3 for these. And this had a little hook, and they had another trailer you could pull behind this. This is plastic, so they were switching to plastic on some of these, although this one is really early. This is US owned as well. US owned Germany. Some of the buses actually have the rollers, and some of them, like this one's the roller here, same thing. And this is Western Germany. Again, this one is mint condition. This was hard to find. And they also had a gas station which did the same as this. This is the gas pump, and this would actually be hooked up to your power pack. So you'd hook your little connectors here, power pack, and then you'd plug this into the back of, well, they had airplanes. They had big airplanes. They were battery operated. You could plug it into that. So this was the electric model, and you could plug it. That's where the battery. Wow. So you could plug the gas station plug into there, and it would charge it. So they were rechargeable batteries. Again, U.S. zone, 1945. Nice interior in these. They were kind of cool. That was fashioned after the Buick. Again, all cast bumpers and jewel type headlights and taillights. They came in different ways. I have one that they call a push one, and you actually had a cable and it would steer it and go along. One of them is wind up, and then one is electric. An electric one used this pack here, which had a separate battery pack that had a cable that went to this, and then this would screw into the top of the roof, and it would also steer it and power it. So that was pretty cool. So what started me here with all these was the Micro series. These are all the Micro racers here. These are pretty nice. These are all cast. They're zinc cast, US zone. This one had white tires. They were quite fast. I had one of these when I was a kid, and we used to race them down the hall. And I've read since that they'll do 35 actual miles an hour in speed, and then they freewheel. Once the motor is done, it disengages and it keeps rolling. Now, I didn't wind that all the way, but you can see it wants to go quite quickly. Brake on. I'll wind it up a little more. I've had to repair a couple of these broken springs and all. You can see it, it's like screaming, it really wants to go. So I've pretty much got most of the ones that I wanted here. That's the Ferrari. This one and the Mercedes are my 2 favorite, but this one is mint shape. And the neat thing about these is they have a brake, like I said, and they're steered from the exhaust here. You turn this, and it turns the steering on it.
Oh, it does.
And how you're supposed to do this is, you're supposed to make sure it goes, it looks like it's straight, but it's not, so you have to really adjust it. So you get it to where you think it was straight, and then, so now it looks like it's going pretty straight. So then you'd wind it, and because you wanted it to go down the hall without running into the wall. But in the advertising was really fun because they talk about the rubber bumper on here, so it won't ruin your parents' furniture. So that's a pretty nice one. That's one of my favorite. That's how I got started again on these, because I thought I got to get one of those. And then I started getting another one, and I got the whole series practically. The Mercedes was hard for me to find. It's not so much that it's rare, it's just that I don't know if it's in demand or there just aren't as many of them. And this one's in pretty nice shape. Has a little plastic windshield, so that one's much newer. And again, they all steer with the exhaust. So that was how I got started on those. And then they actually came out with the buses, the VW bus, the Mercedes, the Ford 300 or something, Porsche 356, and they came out with the Jaguar E-Type, which was pretty nice. This was later, and that's a nice one.
That is nice.
Again, little rubber bumper in the front here. They kind of made it smaller. Again, it steers here, and you can almost see the clockwork inside. They had to redesign the clockwork for this one because it's flatter, and it works a little differently. The other ones are more upright. These you can actually take apart. The stamped steel ones are really difficult because they're all tabs. This is my oldest one here of the stamped steel of the racers. These are really special here. Again, this one has the steering, and the knockoffs, spin-offs come off, and you can take the wheels off, and the tires come off the rim. This is, like I said, pretty early. This is US zone, rubber bumper in front. But this is how they have tabs here that went through, and then they insert a little pick there and bent the tab over. So this is all stamped steel, and so that's how they turned all the tabs under. So it's impossible to take these apart without destroying them. It's pretty hard. They don't usually come apart. And again, it has the brake. These go very fast too. And these were the ones you'd see on the playground, and they'd go around the kids and they'd race them around in circles. You have to have room for them. I actually did it in the backyard before and this one, they wind up, you know. Again, it freewheels at the end. And it goes a long time.
That really does, doesn't it?
And it keeps freewheeling. This one's newer, and this one's newer as well, the Auto Union, which was an Audi based on the Silver Arrow Mercedes. I think that's the Silver Arrow Mercedes there, the same as this one. And they came in a full kit like that. You could buy them later on. And they came with the rack, and you had the tools and the whole thing. I could take it out and show you more. But then it had the box. And this one, again, is mint condition. The box is pretty nice. It's got a little wear to it. So it was kind of like almost like a cloth. So it came with all the steering wheel and an extra nut for it. So you could put the lug nuts on, had all the tools here. Had a set of wheels and an extra set of tires. This is the lift. And a little booklet that told you how to do everything. A lot of these are lithographed, the motorcycles especially. Most of these were painted, I think. They probably had a stencil or something they put over and put the numbers on them. They did do some resin ones. These are a little later, and they have full suspension. And again, they're wind up. They steer with the steering wheel. This is just dealer signs that came out later that you could put on the counter. They had all kind of display counter stuff. The Schuco is, like I said, where I started with all this. So while I was doing the Schuco cars, I got interested in the motorcycles as well, but it was just Schuco at that point. I bought one Schuco motorcycle. They make several different kinds, but primarily they make a couple of models that they make that are very popular. One of them is the Racer. And again, this is US zone Germany, all tin. It's lithographed. In other words, it's printed on metal and then stamped. Some of it's bare metal like this, and the trim pieces, and they easily rust. This one is really nice because it's very original. But the detail was quite nice on these, the fine line detail work for stampings. Even the wheels are two pieces stamped together and crimped together, this wheel anyway. So this one here, he leans over when he turns, and you have a little piece that comes out here. If they will, let's see if it comes out. There it is, and that makes it turn and tip. So it has a little post that comes out. And they had several of these with different numbers, I think 1 through 8 or something. Then they came out with this guy, which was the Trick Rider. This guy had a little wheel right here that would adjust a little gauge here. Can't see it very well, but it's a little needle that moves up and down, and they show the different patterns here that this is supposed to travel in when you start it. Again, the rubber is quite old on these. These are all US owned, Germany. They all work, but this one, the two I have keys in are my best ones. And this one is pretty much like mint. Again, really fine detail, really nicely done, nice stampings. This is two pieces clamshell together, and then they have little trim pieces, separate bar, little gauges here, nice detail. So these are fun. So that's where I started with these guys. This one is Russian, which is basically a copy of the Schuco, very similar in the way it's constructed with the separate tin pieces, little number plate. Also pretty nice. Detail isn't as fine. Obviously the workmanship is not quite as nice, but it's a nice piece, and it works very similar. It turns like that, so I have that little Russian one. These are all German here. This is Arnold. Arnold. These three here were Technofix, again German. This one here is 1950. I have a black one of this as well, which is 1945, it's a little earlier. But these guys here are my favorite because they operate. They go in a circle and they get on and off the bike and stop, and then they go on and they stop and they get on and off the bike. They do that until it winds out. This is my favorite here, and I'll demonstrate this over here so you can see it. These all do different things. Most of these just go in circles. This one actually falls over, and then this little lever flips it back up. It's a very nice piece. Again, all stamped tin. This is US owned, Germany, quite old. They were nice, three-dimensional. The riders especially, in the faces, the detail in the faces is really quite nice. A lot of times manufacturers with cars and motorcycles would use the same stamping, and they would change the colors and make them different. They did that especially during the war when they had military vehicles. And the same motorcycle might be German on one stamping and it might be British on the other one. And they might change the hat or the helmet. That was the only thing. This is Germany, and this is a friction. This is a, so these you would just push in. This one's Japanese, early Japanese, probably early 60s. Really nice graphics on it. Again, all lithographed, nicely made. Stamped wheels and has the gun. They were big into military. This one's PD. This little guy here is another, just a freewheeler. It's German. This is US owned. It's quite early. I think some of these were used on games where they were held and they might have gone around in a circle with some kind of a wind-up toy. This is Marx, this little soldier motorcycle here, which was made in the US. This is actually probably after World War I. This is also early. That's Marx as well, which is American. This guy down here is French. This is Japanese. This one's kind of cool. It's a turnabout. It goes and it bumps into something and it turns, and it's a wind-up. So it just, it's actually more like a friction toy. So I could demonstrate it. That one's kind of fun. This one here in the background is actually German, but would have been made by Tip and Company. And it was actually a woman that started the company, which was pretty unusual for the time. And that would have been very early, pre-war. This one is a re-stamping. It was made later. I have 4 of them. You can still buy them today, and they're relatively inexpensive, but they're really nice stampings. Here's another friction toy here. This again, it's and that's Western Germany. I had to make the windshield. The windshield was missing. Very nicely made. The Schuco stuff, the early, especially the cast stuff, was expensive to make. It took a lot of man hours to make those toys. The Japanese stuff was pretty simple, I think, in comparison. They simplified the process. They didn't have as many pieces that went on it. It was like, 2 stampings, 2 sides with tabs and the motor unit. I think they probably simplified it as much as they could just to keep the cost down. The Germans, it was mostly women that were making them. I've seen the factory photos, and a lot of it was operated by women who did the stampings, and it was quite a process to make stuff. I belong to like 2 or 3 Schuco and Tin Toy. There's even a Facebook group. It's Japanese and European tin motorcycle group. People buy and sell on it, and mostly they just share. And it's nice because it's a pretty polite group. Some of the stuff you can buy extra keys. Most of these tools here are original. They're all in the kits that I have, especially the Auto Union. I have the box for that is in the back there.
Tattoos and motorcycles, once you have one, you need another, and
Yeah.
then you need another.
It's terrible.
N+1.
Yeah. I don't have the room for more vehicles, so I've really kind of limited. But this, I started with just these little boxes,
You need a cabinet soon.
Yeah, I had 4 of them. I had 2 over here and 4 over there, and I filled those up, and then I bought this case, and I gave 2 of these to Ronnie because I didn't have room for them. And then I got this, and I filled it up, and I thought, well, I got room up here. I put the other 2 I had up here. Then I started getting into motorcycles, and I said, well, I got to have more room. So I bought another case about a month ago, and I started putting them in there. Some really fascinating mechanisms, the ingenuity of what some of them do. And you'll see that when I demonstrate some of them. There really are quality stampings, and if you read some of the literature on them, I had to use my phone translator. I read all of the text, the whole book, with my phone, half a page at a time. It's phenomenal, the work that goes into these and making them. There's multiple stampings on each one. There's one main stamping, and then they have to trim it, and they have to do another stamping to punch it, and then tab it, and then assemble it, and all the little pieces that go on. It's quite involved. And all these little tiny intricate details are, and some of them had like these that had little castings made. It's quite fascinating. They got into resin and plastic later on. Metal bottom, it's a stamped steel bottom, but the rest of it's all resin. They were trying to follow the trend of where plastic, toys were going back then. So I'll just scoot around here. These are the micro cars. This is again US Zone Germany. They were otherwise known as turnabouts. I wound it too much, I think. It's too exuberant. There you go. Oh, I better not let it go in there. They used to say you could put this on top of your father's pack of cigarettes and it would go around in circles. There you go. And it would do the same thing. How it works is it has a little wheel here which turns, and it high sides on this front bumper here. It's actually not running on the wheel in front, and so as soon as it goes off the edge, it turns, and that's how it keeps turning. And this one's the same way. This one's quite old. It's quite a cool model. I love the stamping on that.
It's beautiful.
That's Eurozone too. Actually, just see if I can get it to work here. And this one's US Zone. This one's pretty nice. I like the color was different on this one. Again, I think these are pretty hard. So this one here is steered by the little driving light in front, steers it. And it's kind of nice because it has a stamping of the motor, but you also can see the actual wind-up mechanism inside. And you can actually see some of the gears turning inside, which is hard to do. So this one is supposed to work by giving it commands. Stop.
And it's the blowing.
It's the blowing because there's a little diaphragm in here. And they actually had a whistle that's supposed to hit the,
Yes,
blow through and hit the
direct
diaphragm.
air onto it.
Like that.
Isn't that amazing?
So yeah, so that's kind of, I have a couple of these and they're kind of fun. And again, that's pretty early. This one's made in Germany, so this is pre-war. This is very early. And that's in very nice shape as well. All stampings. I may have to move this. Get back here. So this is the Arnold Mac 700. It's a very clever one.
You're winding it anti-clockwise as well.
This one does, yeah. And they're not all. So this actually has 3 different functions it can do. I'm only going to run it into one because that's the best. But there's 3 controls here. One control keeps him just getting on and off of it while it's stationary. The other one is it just sits here and makes the motor sound. And the third one is it goes in circles and he gets on and off. That's the mode I usually leave it in. And that's the one I have it in here. That's how he finishes. Oh, I forgot to get back on.
He starts his bike like you,
Yeah,
George.
yeah, he does. Yeah,
Got your leg
got
in it.
that big kick.
that is-
This guy's my favorite.
Oh, that is awesome.
This is Western Germany, so it's a little bit later. This one's 1945. Unfortunately, this one works well, but it doesn't. It's missing a little spring in here that keeps this in the right direction. So what it does is it goes in a big circle. He gets on and off, but it goes in the wrong direction. The other one I had of these that I sold, I had to take it all apart. And this peels up and there's tabs under there you undo, that peels up and there's tabs. And then you have to take the pin out of here and there's tabs. It's quite involved taking it apart. So you take the 2 shells apart. You have to straighten out the tab to get it apart. You can see it's like a stamped wheel. It's got a seam right there. It's 2 pieces clamped together. And nice face on these. Although his face is crooked, you can see that was always the hardest part, getting these where things line up. Some of them are really off. The Arnold Mac is nicely made, and they did a good job. A lot of separate pieces put together that are tabbed on there. Pretty involved to make that. That's a pretty complicated piece to make. And the works inside is beyond my knowledge. I mean, I took it apart and put it back together based on what I saw, but there's some of these I've done that with, and I have no idea how they really work. I just know that I tried to put it back the way it was. So that's a fun one. I like these a lot. But these are pretty cool. These are very nice. I don't have enough room here for it to go very far, and it would have been sparking in the headlight because there's a little, you really can't see it, but there's a little counterbalance, that little plate in there is counterbalanced. And there's a little grinding wheel, and there's a shaft that comes up from the motor drive through here. And it turns, and you can see the pin here for the grinding wheel in there. And that little flint just bounces on there and strikes it and causes sparks. This is like, I don't know, pre-war, so it's pretty worn down. It just says made in Germany, and it says foreign. So this one was for the foreign market. It's an interesting drive on this one. The gear is a little different. How it drives. It's kind of a, it's not a bevel drive, but it drives a little side gear. And you can see the shaft inside there that goes up to the, from a gear here, and it goes up to the headlight.
Brilliant.
Again, very nice stamping. And these are, a lot of times these are missing the headlight shell, and they're just real thin plastic, and they just seem to disappear. I like the style because they're wearing a scarf. They made them thinner than some of the, like the Technofix guys are all more realistic in terms of the body width, and a lot of these they made them thinner, and they didn't finish the insides as well. They were a different kind of stamping, but they're still quite nice. And this is, again, Arnold. This one here, again, very nice stamping. Very simple, built-in key. I thought they have enough room here. No, not really. So they lean, that's the whole, I mean, you know, that's basically what it is. It's just, and you can tell the wheel is a little wobbly.
Yeah.
It's probably, you know, it's pretty fragile out there, and it's been bent over time. Well, I'll show you this one. This one's fun. This is Japanese. This is kind of interesting because it's actually friction that you wind. And you hit something and he turns. And they had a little, it sounded like a siren to some degree, I think.
Yeah.
The police department. Again, big on police. Interesting little stamping. It's, you can see that it's much more crude than, and this is probably, I think these were made in the 60s, I would guess. Made in Japan. So, that's a fun little piece.
Awesome.
Yeah. The Russian one is just a sidecar. Again, it's nothing real fancy. Here's a typical, again, really thin profile French. This is the, I think this is Paris model. This is just a push. So it would have been just something you would have pushed when you were a kid.
Okay, yes.
Had no power to it. But again, it's a nice
It is.
little stamping. It was probably inexpensive. Something to cut your hands on. All these sharp edges. This one also is just a push. This is French as well. This one's a Paris brand. But it's nicely made. And this would have been pretty early. I don't know what year. I'd have to do the look in my book on it. And some of them, you know, you could tell a lot of them, like these were probably all Zundap engines. Some of the Technofix, they used those with shaft drive. They were doing what was pretty common at the time, but motorcycles were available then. This guy's pretty neat. This is American. This is a Marx. This one's pretty early. It's pretty beat up, but it actually works, and has a big enough key here. I don't have room for it here, but I'll just show you a little bit. And it has a siren. If I wind it up enough, you'll hear the
Even sounds like a Harley, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah, clack. Let's see if I can hear the siren.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's the siren mechanism in here. But yeah, I got this one pretty reasonable. I've seen some other ones that are nicer, and I've been tempted, but so this one has some play, and it probably left out in the rain a few times. Has a wooden wheel on here, which is interesting. On one side, wooden wheel, and then rubber for the traction. I think that's pretty much it. You know, you saw the scooter with just friction, and these are Japanese up here, those two, and that one's China, and those are German there. I think anybody that's into motorsport stuff would appreciate this, because it's and you don't really see it until you look at it closely, and then you go, oh, that's got some interesting features, and it's fun to see how things are made. So it's, yeah, you're welcome. Well, thanks, Mike.